Hi everyone, I'm Joanna Penn from thecreativepenn.com, and today I'm here with Ricardo Fayet. Hi Ricardo.
Hi Joanna, so happy to be here.
Yes, great to have you on the show. Just a little introduction. Ricardo is an entrepreneur and the co-founder of Reedsy, a marketplace for writers to find vetted professionals for editing, marketing, design, ghostwriters, and more. And it's a fantastic service, and we'll be talking about that. But Ricardo, start by telling us a bit more about you, why you have such a lovely accent, and how you got into this entrepreneurial space in publishing.
So as you mentioned, I'm one of the founders of Reedsy. The lovely accent, thank you for saying that. It's a mix of French, Spanish, sometimes Italian. It depends on my mood. And it's due to a mixed European background, basically. And now how I got into publishing, it's a bit of a long story. It was with a friend of mine, Emmanuel, who's a co-founder, and we're very early adopters of the e-reading format. So he imported his, lived in France, and he imported his Kindle from across the States because they weren't selling them in France back then. And I was one of the first people to read on the iBooks app. So I'm one of these weird people who read on their phone, all their books, I know. And he started thinking about what this meant for publishing in general, for authors, for publishers, for agents. So he started learning about self-publishing, and he told me about it. And one of the questions we had is, if you self-publish, writing is only a part of it. So who does the editing? Who does the design? And so we came up with the idea behind Reedsy, and we jumped right into it. And here we are 3 years later. Pretty happy about it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like you mentioned, you're mixed European, and Emmanuel is as well. And he's actually coming on the show to talk about futurist stuff, which is going to be cool in November. But, one of the interesting things about France, especially, I think, is that it's not an early adopter culture technologically. So how do you feel like, the entrepreneurial space we often hear coming out of America versus Europe? So what are your kind of international perspectives on this kind of thing?
France got a bad reputation, really, yeah? We're going to change that. No, it's true. In France is very traditional, and the people who stay in France are very traditional. We moved to the UK. There's a lot of French people with startups in the US. There's a huge French startup ecosystem. The only thing is it's not necessarily in France, though it's developing in France right now with the new president. I think there are a lot of good things going on. It's a lot easier to raise funds right now for startups in France than it was when we started out, so 2-3 years ago. So things are changing. Now, on the early adopter side of things, it's true that, French people tend to be quite traditional and not early adopters. So even though there are startups in France, they might have to look for their early customers in the UK or the US, which is what we did.
Yes, and we should point out that everything you do is in English, right? And
yes.
And all your stuff is aimed at global English-speaking people. But do you think you'd be looking at foreign language stuff in the future? Because, of course, we all want a translation marketplace.
You think I don't want that? Yeah, we're looking at that. I'm working on it.
That's good. Well, we'll hear about that another time. Okay, so today we're going to talk about some of the top mistakes that indie authors make, because you obviously deal with a lot of different authors at Reedsy. So you actually see, and you're kind of above, I say above everyone. You have a bird's eye view. I think that's how we could put it. So I'm often blinded by my own artistic side, but you can see more. So let's start with, what is the number one problem that you see with authors, and perhaps the reason that many authors are so disappointed with publishing?
I think it has to do with really knowing what their goals are and what their definition of success is. So success can be many things, and obviously it evolves around time. I think your definition of success right now is different from back when you started indie publishing. But a lot of authors, when I ask them, ultimately they're working on their first book, and I ask them, what do you want to do with it? Like, what's your ultimate goal? And they often say, I want to get it published. I don't know if with a publisher or myself, and I want to reach as many readers as possible. Well, it's not really a real goal or a definition of success, because that could be said from any author in the world. Any author wants to reach as many readers as possible. A definition of success would be becoming a professional author, so making a living out of writing, so quitting your day job and being able to sustain yourself only with your writing activities, which is what you've done. That can be a definition. Another definition can be plainly monetary. I want to make $1 million out of selling books. That can be another definition of success. But you need a clear goal in mind so that you can kind of draw a path toward that goal. I mean, it sounds very abstract like that, but I think it's really a mindset thing. And before even you take the plunge and decide to publish or make really any decisions with your book, you need to know where you want to go.
And actually, I think even further than that, it needs to be based on time period. So, for example, lots of authors end up making $1 million with their books, but for some people, it might take 30 years. And other people want to make, say, $1 million in a year. Now, you and I both know authors who do either of those things. So I think, and also making a living, it's very interesting. I think we've seen authors who make a living for 1 year and then they can't sustain that over time. So, again, it might be, well, to actually consistently do this over time. So I think that's really important too. Okay, so the next issue, new authors often think that their book is for everybody. So why is that a problem and what should they be doing?
Yeah, I think that's the second main problem I encounter. So my first question usually is, what do you want to do with your book? And then my second one is, who's your book for? And similar to getting an answer, I want to reach as many people as I want, I get an answer, my book's for everybody. Or often I get, my book is, to be honest, probably for women. And I'm great. There's like 4 billion of those in the world, so it should be pretty easy to reach them. But that's, I mean, on the one hand, it's not realistic. So you're setting unrealistic expectations, so you're going to be disappointed. The same point as with the success thing. And on the other hand, when your book is, you finally publish your book and you want to start finding your first readers, if your first readers can be any one out of 4 billion people, it's going to be near to impossible to find that first reader. So there's like two problematics there with not having a very, very clear target audience. First one, you're setting unrealistic expectations. And then when time comes to market the book, you don't know where to start.
And do you think, like, I think demographics, so women aged 30 to 45, can sometimes be less helpful than psychographics, as in, like, you and I both read books for entrepreneurs, right? You know, we read, I don't know if you've read Angel by Jason Calacanis. That's no, not read that one, but
not yet.
You know, that there are books that I know that you and I will read that, other people who also read Stephen King might not read. So do you think that the psychographics there, like people who like this will like my book, is that more powerful?
I think it's a lot more powerful. I mean, demographics, I wouldn't pay that much attention to them because unless they really tie into the psychographics. But yeah, I think to define an audience, there's like a few things. There's Amazon categories. That's a way to define an audience. I write for people who read that category. It can work very well for like genre fiction niches like historical romance or weird West, weird fantasy. Or by comparable titles or authors. I want my books for people who like Stephen King. I mean, even that's a bit broad because Stephen King writes a lot of different stuff, but my books for fans of the Dark Tower series, that's pretty specific. That's an interesting niche. So I think, yeah, these are two things, Amazon categories and comparable titles or authors. They're probably the best way to define who you want to write for.
And sort of, I guess also sort of going back to thinking about what Reedsy does as well. So you have editors, you have cover designers, you have professionals who work with authors. So is it really important for the author to know that information before they try and find an editor or a cover designer?
I mean, for a cover designer, it's absolutely vital, I think, because you're at that stage where you want to give your book what's going to be like the first impression on the reader. And if you're aiming your book at a certain market, a certain niche, the cover needs to clearly identify the book as part of that niche. For an editor, it can be, it depends on the type of editing, of course. We do a lot of developmental editing, and at that stage, it's okay if you're not yet 100% sure who your niche is. Like you can say it's YA fantasy, but I don't know if it's closer to that author or that author, or if it's more urban, or the editor can help you with that. Can say, okay, you've got more like the themes around that. You're writing similar to that author, like you've got some more world building, so maybe try to emphasize that part of your writing or that part of your world, develop this character a bit more, and you'll get into that niche. And then maybe you pay attention to you do what they tell you to do, or you go another direction. But at the editorial stage, I think you've got more leeway, and you don't need to be absolutely certain what market you write for. At the design stage, you absolutely do, because otherwise you won't be able to guide your designer.
Yeah, exactly. Now, and it kind of leads onto the next thing, which is, the word self-publishing is actually really wrong. And, I don't know how we ended up with self-publishing, but, both you and I know that doing it all yourself and, just doing self-publishing you'll end up with a product that is not the best it can be. So, why is trying to do it all yourself a mistake, even if you're struggling with a budget, for example?
Yeah, no, there's two sides to doing everything yourself. The first one is around quality of the product, as you mentioned. I think self-publishing, it's a bad term. We've been trying to use author publishing. A lot of us have tried. It didn't work. It didn't take. So we're stuck with self-publishing now. But a lot of professional people, a lot of professional circles around self-publishing, your podcast, our blog, we try to make it clear that there's a lot more than writing the book in the process. There's the editing, there's the design, there's the production, there's the marketing, and you cannot do everything yourself. And there's like specialties. Editing is requires a very specific set of skills. Cover design is another yet completely different set of skills, and both are very different from writing. I mean, editing could seem similar to writing, but it's not. And design is obviously completely different. So while I think authors should do the lion's share of the marketing and really learn how to market, there's like nowhere around that right now. Editing and design, they shouldn't learn how to do it. They should trust other people to do that. And so that's for the quality part of the product. Then there's something I hear all the time from authors, even professional ones, is that they're overwhelmed. They don't have time for anything. I hear them at conferences, they're tired. They don't even go at the bar at night to get a drink because they're too tired. I mean, it's a shame, really. And I think that's when you reach a point that you're selling well, you're having a good career, maybe you're making a living out of writing, but you're taking on too many things at the same time, because obviously the more money you make or the more successful you are, the more responsibilities you end up having. And so at some point comes a time to probably hire a virtual assistant, which we don't have on Reedsy, by the way. I'm not encouraging people to hire virtual assistants on Reedsy. We don't have them. But if you're getting to that point where you feel you're successful, you've got good editors, good designers, a good process in place, but you have too much stuff on your plate, start thinking about what you can outsource, because otherwise you're just going to burn yourself out. And maybe that's why some authors, 1 year, they're making a living out of writing, and then the next year they can't anymore because they've got too much stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually. And it's hard in one show to kind of aim at people just starting and people a lot further down the track. But, as someone who is further down the track, this is year 6 for me full time. And it is, and even just like last week, I was saying yet again, I need to stop doing everything. I have a team, but I still feel like I'm overwhelmed. So I think you're right. It's a case of when you're just starting out, you need to improve and you need to have a quality product, and then as you and it's about reinvesting the money into your business as well. I think that's really important. And although I would say on the budget, when I was starting out, I just used money from my day job to pay my editor. Like or save it up or use it, whatever you would have spent on your hobby. So I'm not suggesting that people do like a Kickstarter for their first novel, which I've seen, which I think is crazy, right?
It is. For a novel, it is. We're encouraging it for illustrated books because illustrated stuff works really well on Kickstarter, or if you've got a multimedia project, if it ties into video games. For children's books as well, we encourage it sometimes because that if there's merchandising involved as well, it can work. I'm doing, and we've got ties with Kickstarter. I'm doing a webinar with them in a couple of weeks. So some things can work there, but a novel is just not exciting enough, sadly, when it's pitched there on Kickstarter, because you don't have visuals. It's not, unless you've got a huge following already, but if that's the case, you should be able to monetize it through books and not through Kickstarter campaigns.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, saving it up at the beginning and then reinvesting profits to grow your backlist over time. And I did want to ask that again, sort of on the money side and the risk. So one of the reasons people hesitate around editors and cover designers, I think editors particularly, because a cover design is quite obvious. It's like, here's what it looks like, whereas editing can feel it's a more difficult thing. So how, and you, Reedsy vets editors. Yeah. So there's a quality there, but what are the best ways for people to really find the right editor for them?
It's a complicated question. First, I think you need to reach out to several editors, because if you find one that's recommended by an author friend of yours, it's great. But you want several opinions so that you can compare, because oftentimes the first feedback you get on your manuscript, even if it's on the first few pages from an editor, if it's the first time ever you work with an editor, you're going to be impressed. Even if it's like a relatively good, not an amazing editor, relatively good one edited. The first one I had a blog post edited by an editor, I was amazed. I was like, wow, I didn't know my English was that bad, and this blog post could be so much better, So most of the cases you're going to be impressed, but you could have been impressed even more by another editor. So what I recommend, if it's your first time, reach out to several editors and they should automatically give you their first opinion of your book based on your description, and generally they're always going to read your first chapter or your first few pages to get a feel of your writing and how much work it's going to be for them to work on your book. So they can give you a quote, they're going to do that, and then they're going to give you their first impressions. So I think your voice is like this. I think from the first few pages you start the novel in the wrong place, or I think you can improve on this and that, and then have a conversation with them. You can ask them for a sample edit if you want, or if the really, really good editors won't provide one. So what you can ask is for a sample edit or an edit letter that they've done on a previous manuscript, typically. Because if it's for an editorial assessment or developmental edit that really looks at the whole book, it's hard to say, give me a sample on the first chapter, because they need to have a bird's eye view of the manuscript. But you can ask them for an edit letter that they wrote on another author's manuscript to see what kind of things they address in an editorial assessment or in a developmental edit. So get samples. If it's not on your manuscript, on another author's manuscript, they'll be able to provide that. And then compare, see what style you prefer. Some editors are very tough love kind of style. Some others are a lot milder. They're going to say the same things, but maybe in a nicer tone. It depends what you want from the editor. Usually the way we see it on Reedsy, when authors reach out to 4 or 5, they rarely end up going for the lowest quote. So it's not a question of pricing. When you find an editor who resonates with you, you're going to go with them because they resonate with you, not because they're cheaper than the others.
I think that's really important, and also I think it's a bit like dating in that you might not find the right person the first time, and also you change over time as you become a better writer. You may change editors as your style develops and as your voice develops, and also as you become more confident as a writer, you kind of want different things from an editor. So these things change over time, but just on, because obviously you're not having the editors on Reedsy work on all your stuff in order to vet them. So how are you vetting people who come onto the Reedsy marketplace?
So we look at the resume. We look at all the books they've worked on in the past. We check if they're mentioned in the acknowledgements, just to make sure that they've worked on the books that they say they've worked on. We take a look at how the books are doing on Amazon. A lot of the editors on our marketplace have worked for traditional publishers in the past. So we make sure of that. We make sure that the books in their portfolio have been published by the publishers that they said they've worked for. So that everything makes sense. And then a lot of work that we do is to make sure that the genres they list on their profile match the books in their portfolio. So that if you look for a fancy editor on Reedsy, you're going to find editors who worked on The Martians, who've worked with Brandon Sanderson, who've worked with indie fancy authors, so that it's really relevant. And we've gotten to that point where searches on Reedsy are really relevant. So you're going to find editors you're probably going to be impressed with.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And the reason I support Reedsy and recommend it is because of the vetting. Because, and this is, I think, where we are now in the indie space. On the one hand, we have this broad church, which is, yay, anyone can be indie, go forth and just do your thing. And then, but there are a subgroup who want to do things in a professional way. And, recommending services is really important that they are good services. So I appreciate you vetting people.
No, and we provide an additional kind of safety net behind that. If you're not happy with the editor, if the editor's at fault, we take a look into it. Like there's a mediation process. We very, very rarely have to get involved, and when we have to, we just take a look at it and mediate. To be honest, more often than not, it's more on the author's fault than the editor's.
Yeah.
But when it was on the editor's, the author got a refund and was able to find someone else, and so there's additional safety net that's part of Reedsy. But I think the curation we do on the editor's side means that we almost never have to get involved. Authors' feedback are always, I think, average rating of Reedsy is 9.3 out of 10 or 9.4. So people seem to be happy.
No, it's great. Okay, so that's coming back to mistakes. So there are a lot of publishing options, and in fact, more and more publishing options every day now, which is kind of crazy. So what mistakes are authors making when they actually publish?
I think they don't do their research on publishing options, basically. I've got a lot of authors who come to me and tell me, so I've got this book idea I'm writing in, I'm going to publish with Nook. And I said, that's great, but why are you going to publish with Nook? It's going to be available on Barnes & Noble. Have you heard of Amazon? Typically. But that's not the worst case scenario. The other case is I publish with Ex Libris or Author House or whatever vanity publisher is actually going to take a fee for publishing, distributing a book, so something that's free. So that's, that mistake is just falling for the scams or not doing their research. There are also people who do a print run instead of doing print on demand. You did that, right?
Oh, yeah. Way back in the day, 2007. Yeah, doing a print run. Yeah. Before print on demand was really in zone.
Exactly. So you end up with 2,000 books in your garage and you don't know how to sell them. So it's a question of doing research, same as you need to do research on editing and on design. We can help with that. We don't help on the distribution side of things because there are lots of players doing it really, really well. I'm a big fan of draft to digital, typically for everything that's not uploading ebooks to Amazon. And then for print on demand, there's CreateBiz, CreateSpace, Angler Spark. So I think reaching out to people like you, reaching out to people like us, reading blog posts from trusted sources, doing research basically on publishing distribution options will go a long way and will avoid very costly mistakes. Yeah,
no, I agree with you. And the trusted voices is interesting because I've been thinking about this recently because and sometimes it's about who you resonate with. I know that the people listening to this show resonate with me, and I'm not a very hypey, not very American, type of thing. But some people prefer that approach. And again, you're European, so we have a slightly more muted sense. But the trusted voices, how do you recommend people find voices to trust in the space?
That's a tough one because I've got my trusted sources that I recommend to to authors. I'd say, the Alliance of Independent Authors is a great place to start looking because they vet they've got a services directory that they vet, and they have a watchdog service that looks for scams and other things like that. So if you come across a service or someone who claims they'll do amazing things for you, check on the Alliance of Independent Authors blog. So that's selfpublishingadvice.org if they're mentioned on that blog. Obviously, check on your blog if they're mentioned there, or there's David Goffrin as well, who does an amazing job as a watchdog. So check on watchdog places, Writers Beware as well from Victoria Strauss. And I mean, other than that, just Google reviews of services, just as you would do for any kind of other business. Check Google the name of the business, then reviews, and see what people are saying about them. So I think, yeah, it's doing research. It's not believing what people tell you if it's the first time you hear about them. Just like double checking what other people have to say about this person. And all the trusted sources I know in this industry, including you, including hopefully our blog, I haven't seen anything bad mentioned about them anywhere else. So if you've come across a trusted source and you do a bit of research and you try to see if it's a scam or not, if it's actually a trusted source, you'll immediately know, because in the publishing industry, people are very nice. That's why I love this industry. So we're not going to say bad stuff about a website or a person that's doing good things.
And in fact, I think it is so nice that a lot of the times people won't mention the bad stuff. So you're not actually going to find information about bad things on my site because I don't mention them.
Exactly.
It's a bit like Goodreads. I only give books 4 or 5 stars on Goodreads because I would never do a bad thing. But yeah, I think David Cochran is a really good one. But also I think it's the length of time in the market. This is something else. And I'm kind of understanding now why Google gives more page rank to older websites.
Yes.
Because if you've been around as long, my website was started in 2008, and the Alliance has been going 5 years now. And I think you probably remember when we first met, I was like, oh yeah, hi, whatever. And I think it was probably 2 years until after you'd been around at events and we'd met at London Book Fair a number of times. And I was like, oh, hey, Reedsy, these guys they're not going away. And that is a really big deal, I think, because so many of the services are kind of, or things change, like Pronoun, to mention one. It's. I remember when they were Vook back in 2009, they've changed their business model so many times that it kind of makes me go, what is going on there? The kind of that change. So is longevity part of the thing as well?
I think it is. Google rewards longevity, but I mean, you've got semi-shady businesses that have been going a long time as well. I mean, I'll mention Lulu. Lulu's not shady, but they do have overpriced services, in my humble opinion. And they're number one for self-publishing. If you Google self-publishing, I think, or they're right up there because they've been going a long time and because they're international. So don't trust Google, but trust the websites that are really specific to self-publishing that have been going around for some time. One last thing. So I mentioned David Goffrin. Sorry for the wind. Keyboards is also a really good place to look at. The Writers Cafe forum on keyboards, because every bad service, it will get flagged there. And it's got a very critical crowd. So you'll hear, if there's something bad to be said about a service, you'll see it on there.
And although you can get lost in keyboards, I try not to go there because we just end up. But no, it is when you're checking services out, or that's really good. Okay, so I guess last sort of big mistake around marketing. What is the biggest thing that you see authors getting wrong with marketing?
So last thing is, it goes back to authors being overwhelmed. It's authors trying to do everything. And that's like specific to, marketing the book. It's often authors will tell me, I don't get it. I'm on Twitter. I tweet 5 times a day. I have a blog. I've got a Facebook page. I've tried Facebook ads, but it didn't work. I'm doing all that and still I'm not selling anything. And they're spending maybe 3-4 hours on marketing their book every day with absolutely no results. And that happens quite often. It's often among older demographics of authors who are not familiar with social media and things like that. And there's so much bad advice out there about marketing, especially around social media. Like, you need to be on Twitter, you need to have a Facebook page, you need to this, you need to that. Everyone who writes a blog post with a piece of marketing advice will start it or have at some point, you need to in there. And the truth is, there's nothing you need to do. That's like first rule of marketing for startups or for companies. There's nothing you need to do. There are things you need to test, probably. Like Facebook ads is probably something you need to test. Amazon ads is probably something you need to test. If it doesn't work out after you've tested it properly, then don't do it. If you're on Twitter, you have 30,000 followers on Twitter because you've been, been really good, but it doesn't bring any sales and it takes 2 hours of your time every day, maybe like spend less time on it or stop tweeting altogether. There's nothing that you need to do except testing new techniques when you hear about them, and then measuring the results of those. Amazon ads are great because they're very easy to measure. Like, it's right there in your dashboard, average cost of sale. Facebook ads are a bit trickier, but still you're able to see whether they're working or not. In general, advertising online, it's very easy to track. Other things are harder. But generally, when you spend a lot of time on something and it doesn't seem to be producing results, you need to not be afraid to just drop it. And I think that's something authors are really afraid of because they're thinking, I need to market my book. But if you're not selling, then you're effectively not marketing. Even if you spend 5 hours a day on it, it's not marketing.
Absolutely. So, well, then, out of interest, what are some of the things that you guys have stopped doing at Reedsy? Or how have you pivoted for your own marketing? Because you're marketing your brand a lot, aren't you? Or what works, what hasn't worked for you guys?
That's a good question. We've done a lot of Hangouts interviews like that. Haven't worked so well because you need to spend a lot of time on it, I think, and really focus on it. A bit like you did. And we couldn't focus just on that. I think in the beginning we tested Facebook ads for promoting content and getting clicks on our website, and that didn't work. And now we're spending quite a bit on Facebook ads, but for other stuff, for lead gen ads and for promoting our free online courses, and that works. What we spend the most time and resources on is content and education for authors. And we tie that into SEO. At the beginning, our blog had no traffic at all. And now it has quite a bit of traffic thanks to SEO. So at some point, we're thinking, why do we write 2 blog posts a week when very few people read them and there's very low traffic on our blog and it hasn't improved? So what do we need to change? So we started looking into SEO, and we started producing content that would answer Google queries. And that gave us traffic to our blog and supported our other blog posts that are not necessarily just there to answer Google queries. So yeah, it's constantly kind of reevaluating what you're doing in terms of marketing and seeing what's really moving the needle or not. Some things take I think the most dangerous marketing activity is the one that takes you a lot of time and produces just a little bit of results.
Yes. Like
just enough to let you think that you need to keep going doing it, because it provides you maybe 5% of your income, but takes, 50% of your time. So I don't really want to lose 5% of my income. But then it's almost certain that if you drop that and liberate 50% of your time, you'll come up with other techniques or other things that will be a lot more profitable marketing-wise.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I actually think Amazon ads for me is kind of in that bracket because it's like it is a tiny little lift, but for me it barely outweighs the effort, and whereas because I sell in other ways, like through the podcast and things that I can't directly measure. I can't measure somebody listening right now who might decide to go check me out on Amazon and might decide to buy a book. So it is very hard to figure out these things. But I like what you're saying, like evaluating, what's worth doing and what isn't. So just on that, because you're an entrepreneur and you're used to things like pivoting and changing direction and things like that. So are there any sort of mindset shifts that you've had to go through as an entrepreneur in your journey that might help other people?
Other authors or other people in general?
Author entrepreneurs, like authors who
entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I'd say thinking of yourself as a business, because at this time, think of yourself as a business and your books as products. Because from the time you publish a book and start selling it online or even offline, you are effectively a business. You're selling a product. And if you start thinking it that way, you'd have the right mindset, then you need to learn about actually how do you set up a business. There's a lot of administrative things, or a lot of other more mindset related things. So you start reading books about how to set up a business, about how to run a business, start reading about how to market a product, how to market a product online, how to market products on Amazon. Marketing a book on Amazon is not necessarily that different from marketing other types of products on Amazon. So maybe reading about just like Amazon algorithms in general, not only related to books, will be helpful. Actually, maybe you'll foresee what kind of advertising opportunities will arise in the future for authors by taking a look at what's available to other people, to other vendors on Amazon. Like authors have very, very little opportunities to advertise. Like the advertising is very narrow. Publishers have a bit more, and other vendors have a lot more. Start thinking of yourself as a business. Your books are products. Do research that does not just like author oriented. If you want to learn about Facebook ads, there's Mark Dawson, but there's also John Loomer. John Loomer is like more general Facebook ads, but again, he'll spot new things probably even quicker than Mark Dawson. And I love Mark, and he's doing a great job. But like I'm saying, read John Loomer as well, to read his blog. So even if it's not 100% related to authorship, to books, then read general things. And finally, there's a big thing when it comes to marketing, and it's really mindset, is think from a reader perspective. Instead of how am I going to sell this book, how can a reader find about my book, and how are the readers I want to reach going to learn that I exist and that I have books that they're probably going to enjoy. And as soon as you start thinking from a reader's perspective, I think a lot of things become clearer in marketing the book and where you need to place it, and on your marketing activities as well. I mean, that's the whole idea behind Nick Stephenson's course and blog on author marketing and reader magnets. Even it's shifting the mindset from I want to sell a book to how are people going to find out about my book.
And then I did want to just ask you about starting out as well. Again, kind of winding back time to when I first met you. You didn't just go, oh, we'll start a company called Reedsy and we'll immediately make lots of money and, it's going to be great. I remember it being hard for you at the beginning. So tell us a bit about that journey. Like how long did it take from when you started the business to when you went, okay, this is actually going to work?
That's the thing. It's a bit different when you're a startup because you go all in. Like we quit our day job, we quit everything. So you have to believe that it's going to work. Otherwise, you're certain it's not going to work. For authors, it's a bit different. I encourage everyone to keep their day job and start ramping up things slowly. But I think you really got to believe, even if you do that, you got to believe that it's going to work and that you're going to achieve whatever your definition of success is. Of course, you need to have a proper plan for it. Until, the moment when we really realized we're going to make it, we still don't know if we're going to make it. We're profitable, so we're a good company. We're not going to die, basically. And we know that we've been doing that for probably a little less than a year. But I think what I really enjoy and what I really feel that we've become, I'd say, successful is when I go around at conferences or I talk to other authors and tell me, Reedsy, oh yeah, no, I've heard about you guys. You do great stuff. And the less often I have to explain to people to authors, professional authors, what Reedsy is, the happier I am. Because it means that we've achieved, we're known everywhere. And if people need our services, and they're gonna come to us. If they don't, they won't. But at least they know about us. So kind of my job is done.
No, that's great. Yeah, and I think you're right. It's that, but I mean, that's kind of what all authors are aiming for too, is like, most people have never heard of most authors, including like Lee Child, or like there's only what 3 famous authors in the world: J.K. Rowling, Stephen King, and James Patterson, probably.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, who were alive anyway. But no, that's great. And building our brand is so important. Okay, so tell us then, what does Reedsy offer in terms of the various services and education?
Yeah, so the core of Reedsy and what's always been our idea and will remain always central to business is, as you said, a vetted marketplace of editorial, design, marketing, publicity, ghostwriting, and hopefully soon translation talent. And that means we get around 200 applications from freelancers every week who want to be listed on our marketplace because they know they're going to get work on it. And we accept around 3% of those. So it's very, very highly curated, and you're only getting people who worked with traditional publishers in the past or with best-selling authors who we've verified, and on top of that, we provide a safety net. So we're actually taking a very strong financial interest in those people being good. Then we've built a lot of collaboration tools around that. So actually, I think working with an editor or designer on Reedsy is probably easier than via email, because you've got a collaboration dashboard. You can share files, messages, everything stays in one place. Payments are automated, receipts, invoices, VAT, everything is there. So it makes it really easy to kind of build a freelance team around your writing business and keep it on there. And that's why a lot of publishers actually use this as well, because it kind of streamlines their production workflow and helps them keep all the finances in one place for freelancers. Then we've got a free formatting tool called the Reedsy Book Editor, which is similar to Vellum, for those of you familiar with Vellum, except it's free. It's browser-based, so you can access it from any device, computer, laptop, tablet, iPhone, Android. And it has less customization possibilities than Vellum, to be perfectly honest. However, it exports to both ebook formats and print-on-demand formats. So you can choose your trim size, a bunch of other options, and export your books. So the best advice is take a look at it. It's free, and it works really, really well. We keep building it up to add more customization possibilities. But for those of you who haven't purchased Vellum, who are hesitating, take a look at our Reedsy Book Editor. If it meets your requirements, that's probably a good option. And finally, we've got what we call Reedsy Learning, which is something we launched in October last year. And it's kind of a way for me to do less customer service. It's it's a bunch of free online courses on various topics. So I wrote one on Book Marketing 101, in which I go through the different mistakes we mentioned today, plus other tips. I wrote one on Facebook advertising for authors as well. So not trying to compete with Mark Dawson. It's a very, very light course. They're more there to get you interested about a topic and give you enough to get started, basically. I've got one on Amazon ads as well, because I've run a few campaigns for other authors that have worked out all right, not amazing. But Amazon ads are pretty simple, so I know how they work and I can describe that. And then we've got courses by professionals on our marketplace. We've got a UK editor of The Martian who's writing something on writing for fancy right now. We've got a literary agent who's writing something on word building. We've got a great course on dialogue. We've got a course on short stories. A bunch of craft topics like that, publishing, marketing, and audiobooks as well. So if you Google Reedsy Learning, you'll come across them. The concept's very simple. You get an email a day for 10 days in the morning. It's a very short read. It's like ideal over coffee. Have a cup of coffee every morning. You learn about something new every morning for 5 minutes. And yeah, that way I can point people to the courses instead of writing again 10 times. You should know what your definition of success is. You shouldn't write for everyone, things like that.
Yeah, and that's why I have an autoresponder series as well, which is fun with my blueprint. And we are saying the same things. I think this is really important. And, I know that your ethos is similar to mine, almost exactly the same as mine, to be fair. Yeah. And that's really great. And it's great having a different voice in the space who believes the same thing. And, you and I both believe in this as a movement as well as a business. So definitely. I think that's really important. So where can people find Reedsy online?
So they can find Reedsy simply at reedsy.com, but you've also got a special link that will give you $20 credit if you use thecreativepenn.com/Reedsy. So that's a special link that you can thank Joanna for. So thecreativepenn.com/Reedsy, REEDSY, and that will take you to a special page that will tell you that if you sign up there, you'll get $20 of credits that will go towards your first Reedsy collaboration, whether it's an editor, designer, marketer, ghostwriter.
Fantastic.
Hopefully you won't need a ghostwriter.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Ricardo. That's been absolutely fantastic. Can people find you on Twitter as well?
Yeah, at Ricardo Fayet, all together.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for your time. That was great.
No, thank you so much for inviting me.